Good morning, everyone. My name is Devin Smith, and I'd like to welcome you to the Summer Online Learning Series. And on behalf of the entire Continuing and Professional Education, or CAPE team here at the University of St. Thomas, I'd like to thank you for joining us this morning and taking part in our community in this kind of a way. Today's session is titled, What All Sales and Marketing Professionals Need to Know. And we're very excited for Sean Higgins, technology entrepreneur and St. Thomas alum, to share his insights with us as we kick off our summer online learning series. Some of you may have seen Sean's current CAPE course, which is called The Art of Sales Persuasion, or you may have seen him in other areas of the university. But before I give Sean a proper introduction and give the floor over to him, I wanted to remind you that we have 3 summer online learning series sessions planned this year, including today's session. So after we have the chance to hear from Sean this morning, the next session is on July 14th, where we'll hear from Katie Berry on harnessing the power of social media. And we'll conclude the summer series on August 12th with Blake Darso with a really interesting talk titled 40 Years of Jim Collins in 40 Minutes. So don't forget to register for those sessions and invite your colleagues, tell your network, tell your friends who might be interested in some free high-level learning this summer. That's the only announcement that I had, but I do want to share a couple of reminders for how this session is going to run today. So I'm going to introduce Sean momentarily. And Sean is actually going to, kind of at the beginning of his talk, invite all participants to answer a question through the chat feature on Zoom. So I want to make sure that you note the location of the chat feature. If you're on a screen, a laptop or desktop computer, it's going to be at the toolbar at the bottom. Hit the chat button. If you're on a mobile device, it might be in a different location. But if you're on a suitable device where you can type in an answer, just want to make sure that you're ready and you know where that is so that you can interact with us this morning. And so when you click on that chat feature, make sure that you're sending your message to all panelists, not a direct message to Sean. That's going to ensure that myself and our team kind of behind the scenes have access to view what you're sending in for your responses so that we can all kind of help Sean out in that sort of way. And in addition, Sean let us know before we got started this morning that he's open to actually responding to questions, not only at the end when we do some Q&A time, but actually during the session as well. So if there are emergent questions, things that kind of are coming out of what he's talking about, send those things through the chat, through all panelists, and I'll do my best to kind of moderate and interrupt Sean in a timely way so that we can get those questions answered as we go. And then, of course, at the end, if we've got some time for Q&A, we want to make sure we log a lot of those questions for that time as well. Our goal is to wrap up this entire session, as always, by 8:55 a.m. Central Time, and that's going to give you a chance to breathe before your next engagement today. If you have any technical difficulties at all, please just know that the session is being recorded and you're going to receive a link to the video along with some other resources just a few business days from now. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Sean Higgins. Sean is the CEO of BetterYou, which is a digital coaching platform that leverages artificial intelligence to encourage users to spend their time on things that matter the most to them. Recently, BetterYou was named a 2020 Mini Inno on Fire Award winner in the early stage startup category, which is really exciting. And prior to BetterYou, Sean has had even more entrepreneurial success founding Ilios, which is a video platform that lets users record videos and instantly share them on the cloud. And he led that team from 0 to over $1 million in annual recurring subscription revenue, which is really impressive. Sean is a 2-time grad of the University of St. Thomas. He earned both his undergraduate degree and then his MBA as a Tommy. And in addition, Sean stays connected to our community as an adjunct faculty member here at St. Thomas, sharing his experience not only with our CAPE programming and events and engagements like this, the online learning series, but also through degree side courses to shape the next generation of Tommy entrepreneurs. And so with that, I'm really thrilled to have Sean with us today to share. Sean, thanks for being with us. The floor is yours.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for the introduction, Devin. Hi, gang. Yeah, so I'm Sean Higgins, excited to kind of dive in and share a little bit about the wonderful world of sales and marketing. Before we dive in, just to kind of, layer in a couple other pieces, my expertise is really in a few areas. I've worked at a lot of early stage companies over the last 10 years and really helping them find that initial product market fit or new market discovery. Taking a new market from 0 to multiple millions in annual recurring revenue is really where I love to spend my time. Some of those companies have gone on to get acquired, like Ilios, which Devin mentioned earlier. I've also got a lot of exposure through Techstars to working with broader organizations as well. So whether you're someone looking to dive into a new market, maybe you're looking to find product market fit with an existing product or category you have, or someone who's got a medium or small sales team and you're looking to scale up and find ways to improve results on that side, I'm really excited to make the connection here today. Before we dive in and take a look at the agenda I put together for us, as Devin mentioned, I got a question for each and all of you, which is, what's one thing you're hoping to take away from today's session? So if you've got a second, let's jump into chat here. What's one thing you're hoping to take away from today's session? And this way, I've got a lot of auxiliary slides we could add in if there's something that's really popular that we might be at risk of missing here. So let's just take a minute to do that, enter that in. And I'll keep an eye out for kind of what we've got on that side. Great. So we've got someone who's interested on the marketing side. How can a nonprofit effectively market at lower costs? Product development, pitch planning. Ooh, I love the last one. Dan, ideas on how to change the mindset of the organization from ops to sales. Hiring. Yeah. All right. I like it. I like it. Got a few on the nonprofit side, a few folks on the content marketing side, a couple questions on hiring. Nancy, I saw you had a question specific on health and well-being. That might be one to ask me in the Q&A. It'll be hard to weave that into the whole presentation for everyone. Maybe I can give us an example though as we get going here, because that is a market we work with a lot at BetterYou. Awesome. So let's jump back here. I'm going to show you the agenda I put together here. I might make a couple modifications on hiring and then also on cost, because it seemed like that was a couple areas folks are interested in how we can get marketing going at a reasonable budget. So the agenda I put together is both marketing and sales. There's a blend of each. The first is kind of more marketing heavy, which is on content. So whether I am sending a newsletter, whether I'm running a LinkedIn ad, all the way down to a presentation I might put together for a prospect, what I'm saying matters. So what's a framework that I can use to make sure that I'm having maximum impact each and every time I get my message out the door? The second piece was on prospect scoring. So in most organizations, there's this handoff between sales and marketing, and there tends to be a lot of confusion around when it should happen. What's a lead that sales should be following up with? When should we actually be making that handoff? How can we make that handoff as smooth as possible? And then the third piece is, how do we build pipeline? So here I focus a lot on specific tactics and strategies. I'm actually going to weave in our question on hiring here into the how we build our pipeline, because having a good, a rainmaker salesperson, I think was what the question described, is a key piece that's part of those tactics as well. And then the last one is tracking performance. We manage what we measure. So making sure that you've got some simple metrics that you can see how you're doing at a glance from your sales and marketing organization. I'm really excited to dive in. We're gonna cover this ground here together, and we're gonna start with content. So there's a framework that I've used at startups, at Fortune 500s, that helps folks understand how to craft a really good message. And the framework is called the 3 questions. I believe that there are 3 questions that you have to be able to answer before you're ready to talk to any potential customer. And those 3 questions are: why anything, why us, and why now? So why anything? This means in a category that a prospect may not understand, why should they care? If you have a product that's a CRM, in a world before CRMs, people have black books with names and numbers written in them. If you can't answer why your product category matters, the conversation just stops. Why us? This is about why the customer or prospect should work with you and not a competitor or not a tangential solution. This can be about features. It can be about price. But similarly to why anything, if you can't answer this question in your interaction with the prospects, the conversation stops. They pick someone else. The last part of the puzzle is why now? Why now is why this person you're interacting with should work with you today and not in 6 months from now, not a year from now. This is usually the hardest question for most folks. When you join a new organization or when you become a leader on a nonprofit, the product or service, right, that you perform, that's part of the reason why you signed up in the first place. So usually the why us to you is very strong and it's something you'll be able to communicate. The why now is a lot harder. And if you have a poor answer to why now, well, the conversation won't stop. It goes on forever because you never actually get a firm commitment. So we're going to take a look at a few examples of how other companies are answering these three questions in their marketing, in their sales collateral. We'll start with a website, then we'll go into a LinkedIn ad, and from there we'll dive into some specific email examples just to make sure we can identify when these three questions are being answered, and then give you these tactics that you can take and leverage for your own product or service. So the first site I always like to look at, and I haven't looked at SalesLoft's site in a while, this is from 6 months ago. SalesLoft always does a phenomenal job of answering one of our three questions right on their main page, usually above the fold. And so SalesLoft, their landing page says, drive more revenue faster. SalesLoft, the #1 sales engagement platform, helps the world's top performing teams transform the way they sell. This is an example of a why anything. Maybe you don't know what a sales engagement platform is. I certainly didn't 10 years ago, 8 years ago, whenever SalesLoft came out. But what's interesting is why I should care about a sales engagement platform is, well, they help you drive more revenue in a shorter amount of time. Sometimes it's as simple as that. It's a very aspirational type of phrase. That's something every sales and marketing leader is probably looking to do. And so sometimes as simple as that those 4 words can help give me a reason. Oh, this is why this product category matters. WeWork. Now, I have not been to a WeWork in a little while. Some of you might be dialing in from other rival co-working spaces, so I don't want to create any tension, but WeWork has an interesting ad here where they talk about freshly brewed coffee, open air office spaces, alluring conference rooms, and a network of WeWork members supporting your vision. What's interesting here is this is talking about differentiation. WeWork is showing us visually in the image and reinforcing it with the text. They've got some nice spaces. They've got great conference rooms. They've got open office spaces. That's an example of product differentiation. In their eyes, it's something they have that you can't go find at the next co-working space. And so that is their answer to why us. There's also a second answer to the question, why us in here. It's the network of WeWork members that support their vision. So it's the same question they're answering, why us? But they're answering it in 2 ways. One, we have nice spaces. Just take a look at this great image of a space you could be working out of. And 2, you get a group of folks that's going to work with you every step of the way to help you achieve your business's objectives. So we went through a couple of those different pieces. I'd like to switch it up a little bit and hear from y'all in terms of the 3 questions and what you think that some of the content we're going to look through is asking. The next 3 emails are email templates that I've actually used. Now, before we go into them, I should have a disclaimer. That doesn't mean they are phenomenal in every way, shape, or form. In some of these, they will be a clear kind of learning examples for us to dive in on. But as we go into these next emails, I'm actually going to ask a poll of which of our 3 questions do you think this email is going to be addressing to a prospect. These emails will be sales emails. They might be sent from a sales development or a business development team. They might be sent by you if you're an army of one. And they are examples of outbound email content. So we're going to take a look at them. I'm going to read them off here briefly, and then we'll ask a quick poll to see which of our 3 questions, why anything, why the product category matters, why us, why you should work with us and not the next person, differentiation, cost, and why now, what's a compelling reason to work with us today instead of in 6 months from now. And we'll go through them all together. Let's do it. So this is an intro email. This is an email I actually would send to folks at Ilios, which was a startup I founded in 2012. Hi, Bob. I'm Sean with Ilios. We're a video platform that brings together video and ADA accessibility together in one click. We just enabled Xavier University to add unlimited recording, storage, and captioning to all their content while saving 25%. Would it make sense to get 15 minutes to see how we can help insert your company? Let's jump in with that poll and see where folks are at and how we're tracking with the 3 questions. Fantastic. All right. It looks like the top answer that's coming back is why us and why anything. Those are the top two. Good work, y'all. So why us? Why us is there's a clear line in here that is why us, which I think is this one. We just enabled Xavier University, which is social proof. Another competitor probably can't say that they worked with Xavier University in the same capacity. So that alone could be a why us. But you also have the feature differentiation. We do storage, recording, we do all these things. And if the next guy doesn't do that, well, that could certainly also be a why us. I also like this first line. We're a video platform that brings video and ADA accessibility together in one click. If you didn't know what a video platform was, you could have just learned about it and why it matters there. So this email, definitely the why us is the strongest and the most clear, this second line. You also have the savings. We're trying to scream why us with this email. You do have a little bit of the why anything as well. One other piece that I want to call out with this message is actually the ending. Notice we're not actually trying to sell a product here, right? I'm not saying, hey, you can buy for $200 a month or anything like that. We're selling a meeting. Would it make sense to get 15 minutes to see how we could work with your company or school? And what's interesting about that is the top response that you'll get for a lot of outbound is a simple no or not right now kind of a thing. But you almost have a built-in rebuttal. So when someone says no to an email like this, they're not saying no to your product. They're saying, no, it doesn't make sense to get 15 minutes. And so it gives you the ability to dig a little deeper and ask why it may not make sense, right? Is it something around timing? Did maybe your initial, intro not do a good job explaining your product? I had a number of people with this business in particular that said, oh, no, thanks, Sean. We use Zoom or we use WebEx. We're good. Even though that had nothing to do with what we did. We recorded videos and you could replay them back, and we did closed captioning, which is not Zoom or WebEx or anything like that. But by getting that feedback, by qualifying out what that no really meant, we would learn, oh, our initial presentation, it's not as crisp as we need it to be. People are confused. They don't understand what the product does. Or, they'll tell us, hey, this is interesting. We're not in the market for this right now. Come back in a year or 6 months. That tells us, oh, maybe we should have tried to answer why anything instead of why us. Or perhaps they say, sorry, we're picking a competitor and we know our why us, even though we tried to answer it here with our features, with our cost, maybe it wasn't compelling enough. And so by getting that feedback from folks, even if it comes in the form of no's, no, it doesn't make sense to me, that can help you understand where your messaging is strong and where you could use improvement with regards to the 3 questions. Thinking about another email example, because we haven't exactly talked about, well, the last question, not to give us a spoiler, but let's take a look at an email here. This is called the exploding offer. So this is an email template we would actually send to folks. Well, hi, Dave, I'm Sean with Ilios, a platform that helps teams record, edit, organize, and share video at a fraction of the price. In fact, this month, if you show us your video bill, we'll match your current offering, capability for capability, and we'll save you at least 25%. Would it make sense to get 15 minutes to discuss? So let's take a quick minute and see which of our 3 questions do we feel like this email is addressing the most here. Oh, fantastic. So we've got 85% of folks with the why now, and you're absolutely right? The last question, it's creating a compelling reason to take action. So if you show us your bill this month, we will guarantee you a 25% savings. So what we're doing here, how we're answering that last question, is we're using a tactic called link and trade. So we're saying if you take some sort of action, we will do something of value for you. In this case, we'll give you a discount or a locked-in savings. When we launched this campaign, we thought we knew what our competitors were charging in the market. I had people I had never talked to before in my life send me copies of their bill from last year. After we had 8 or 10 bills within the first couple days of running this campaign, we pivoted all our resources and had everyone start running this campaign because it was really successful. We generated substantial, hundreds of thousands of dollars in contract value from this campaign alone. But the reason it worked is because we made an ask that was actually attainable. If we had said sign up this month, we probably wouldn't have gotten as many bills because we linked to an action that's pretty hard. It's hard to break a contract. Some of these folks were mid-cycle. They had to shift gears completely to sign up. So what we did is we said, hey, all you have to do is show us your bill. And then the qualifier was they had to sign up within a few months. We gave them some extra time to actually make the switch. But just by showing us the bill, we would give them a quote that was capability for capability, identical to what they were getting, and was a little bit cheaper than the next guy. That was one of the ways we were competing there. So fantastic. The other common ways, because sometimes folks can't offer a lower price, and price, you can't make an exploding offer like this. Other ways to combat the why now question. First, you can think about loss aversion. So maybe you're a product that has an ROI to the customer. Maybe you're like SalesLoft and you have a tool that improves revenue. Think about the ways that you can drive that revenue, right? So instead of having an email that focuses just on, we're going to improve your revenue, 10%, think about the inverse. So there's a comment in human psychology from Daniel Kahneman, which is losses loom larger than gains. I've never lost sleep in my life over missing a gain. I've lost sleep in my life over losing. And you can take that same concept and just flip some of your gains into avoiding a negative. Sean, you're losing out on $100,000 in top line revenue each month that you don't have a sales engagement tool like SalesLoft. That hurts. Missing out on an extra $100,000 towards my goal doesn't matter as much to me. That's a missed gain. I don't care. But losing that on my top line, that really hurts. And so if you have a solution that has a solid ROI, you can think about that loss aversion concept as a way to create some urgency around your product. The other side, I would say, is you can leverage this link and trade concept with something besides price. Maybe it's a new feature. Maybe it's giving them a premium membership or access to an event that you're hosting that's early before everyone else. All you need to worry about is if you're able to link to something that the end customer finds value. If you're able to do that, you can answer that why now question. All right, we've got one more email we're going to look at here. This one I think is the hardest one, but y'all have been doing really well. You answered both the other two correctly. So let's see what we got. Stacy, haven't heard from you in a while. When we last spoke about your difficulties with insert pain point and how our offering could help you achieve this goal over this timeline, are you still interested in continuing the discussion? If not, please let me know so I can stop reaching out. Which of the three questions here are we thinking? What do you think? Yeah, this is a tough one. We're actually pretty evenly split. We've got a little bit more on the why anything. Some folks are going with why us, why now. We're pretty evenly split with the other three. So I'll give you my take on this email. I don't like this email, just as a full stop before we dive into which questions it's looking at, because certainly there are ways you could write it where it could answer some of the three questions. The reason I don't like this email is because it starts off from a place of guilt. Stacy, I haven't heard from you in a while. And it kind of ends with a place of guilt. Are you still interested in continuing the conversation? If not, let me know and I'll stop reaching out. So on both of those sides, I don't love this email. The way I kind of think of it is like this. If you had a sales team that was trying to get a hold of someone and they called them a lot, frantically, way too much. Maybe you called this person 100 times and you left them a 24 voicemails or just something ridiculous. If you actually got a hold of that person on the phone, you wouldn't start your conversation by mentioning that you called them 100 times and left them 24 voicemails, because the person would hang up right there. They'd say, this person is crazy. I do not want to talk to them. And so mentioning failed touch points right at the beginning of your message, it's just not a great way to start off a relationship. If you have someone's attention, which we do, they're looking at this email right here and now, you want to put your best foot forward. You want to answer those three questions about how this person's life 6 months from now could be a lot better if there was an opportunity for collaboration. You know their problem that they're struggling with. Here's a way we could help you. Focus with what you can do for them, right? Lead with that as opposed to, it's been a while, like, please let me know. I appreciate any response. Those types of emails, well, they're out there in mass circulation. A lot of companies use these types of emails, especially for their outbound sales. It's not the best way to start a relationship with someone. And so in terms of which questions, I actually like to think this one doesn't answer the bulk of our 3 questions. It could answer like why anything, depending on this line, how clear you are with the pain point, what you actually put into that parentheses. I could see that answering a why anything. But for me, I actually like to think that this one is not as effective as the other 2 that we've looked at. It's a little harder to tell what we're actually trying to answer here. The last email we won't have a poll on because it's literally just this. Bob, I wanted to follow up on this one. How are things looking? And so this email does not answer any of the 3 questions. But when we think about outbound sales and the campaigns I personally ran, this was my best email. This was better than the exploding offer email. This is better than the intro email. It was better, certainly better than the breakup email. And the reason it was the best email was because it was all about the power of follow-up. If you're using, marketing content, or if you have an outbound team, usually it's 8 touch points to get a meeting with someone you haven't met before. 8 touch points. There are dozens, hundreds, thousands of companies that give up after the first unresponded message. If you take one thing away from our time today, don't let that be you. Try other mediums. Maybe you have an ad on LinkedIn that isn't being successful. Try a newsletter campaign. Try going to a different route. Try, going through content marketing. There are other ways to get a hold of people. And what's so important here is different channels completely amplify your message. When we run our outbound campaigns, we have a team of business development reps. They do email content, they'll do phone calls, they'll connect with folks on LinkedIn, post content on LinkedIn. When we find our most success is when we're using different channels. We've had folks who have said, I just want to send emails, or I just want to do phone calls. And you inevitably get folks who you can't reach for whatever reason. And you do happen to get them. I remember I had someone I got on the phone who I'd emailed, maybe 3 or 4 times over the course of the month. And he told me, he said, Sean, this product is really something. I wish I had known about this earlier. And I double checked my inbox. I said, I'm pretty sure I messaged this guy, right? And I said, yeah. I said, he would have known about it earlier if he'd been more responsive on his emails, but it doesn't matter because certain people are more responsive in different channels. And so you're going to miss part of your audience by only focusing in one area. So the 2 points with this follow-up is 1, be persistent, 8 different touch points. Now, that doesn't mean you're sending 8 emails. Mix it up, leverage those different channels. That would be the second part of the puzzle. I'm going to do a quick pause here because I saw we've got some questions kind of coming in here on the chat. Let's dive in. All right.
Yeah, Sean, I was actually going to bring this one up. This is Devin, by the way, for
Jump
those
in,
listening.
Devin,
yeah, so someone asked a question that was specific to the first email example. And they had called out, you didn't define what ADA compliance was or ADA accessibility was. What if your target doesn't know what that is? And maybe just to expand the question a little bit more, what, in getting to these 3 questions, what role does brevity play? And just being brief and to the point with these things without giving all the detail.
Yeah, it's a great question, Devin. And I appreciate the add-on there of the brevity side, and also just, what if someone doesn't know this concept? Depending on the market that you're in, you might find that the why anything has already been answered for you, right? If you were selling a CRM product today, most Fortune 500 companies, if that was your market, most Fortune 500 companies already have a CRM. They're using Salesforce, they're using Microsoft, they're using HubSpot, whatever it is. And so the why anything has already been established and answered by these other companies and incumbents. And so you can actually skip that step of the process and jump right into the why us. In our particular market, ADA compliance, which is the American Disabilities Act, was very well known in higher education. Folks had to deliver comparable content to folks that had disabilities, the same type of content they would be delivering to anyone else. You weren't excluding anyone, essentially. And that's why video captioning was really important for folks who couldn't hear the sound, the audio, right, from the video. And so if you're in a spot where you can dive a little deeper, you can feel free to kind of skip that and be brief, to Devin's point. But perhaps you're getting that feedback from people. Maybe people say no, and you ask them a little bit more about how they're handling ADA today, and they don't have no idea what you're talking about. In that case, you're in a spot where you probably need to educate the market. And so these emails the ones we've looked at, they tend to be a little bit more sales heavy emails. I also will include content heavy emails where maybe it's a case study and I'll talk about how so-and-so, became compliant with the ADA with video accessibility. And it would be a quote from Gordon at Xavier University about how they got all their content captioned and why that was so important. So maybe more of an explainer. I wouldn't try to do it all in one email. You want to keep your emails short. A lot of people view their emails on this. And so if you are sending a long message, it's unlikely to really capture someone's attention. One powerful tool that I use for email content is the Hemingway app. Hemingway app is a free service. You can go online and enter your email content in. And it not only will give you a score on, spelling and various things that you could get anywhere, but it also gives you a readability score. And you want that to be as low as possible, right? If your readability is age grade, 16 or 20, it could mean you just have a lot of content. It could mean you're using really long words. You're not really communicating what you want to communicate at a glance. And so that can be an effective tool to kind of combat some of these pieces. Awesome. Great question. Great question. So the next piece I wanted to dive in on here is the handoff. So we launched some successful marketing, right? We've got our ads out there. They're doing well. We were doing our outbound emails. Maybe that's generating some hits. When do you actually take someone and send it to a salesperson, or maybe you're the salesperson at your nonprofit or organization? When should you really start prioritizing this person? There are a few different things you can look at. First, you can look at the organization. Is the prospect at a company that kind of fits our industry? If we target manufacturers, 3M, that would fit, right? If we've got an inbound lead from US Bank, that may not be as relevant for us. Buying cycle. This is one that you have to ask questions about. What's your timeline to essentially connect with us and get this product going? You think about the contact. Are you working with a person who's made a decision within the last year? We learned early on at Ilios that if we were working with a school, some schools had no intention of using video, which sounds foreign in 2021. But back in 2013, 2014, some schools said, no, we don't need video. We've got, textbooks and articles and things. We're good. And so if we were your first kind of cloud-based product, we knew we had no chance of actually, being a provider for you because there's too many hoops to jump through. So you're looking for some of these different pieces. The one I really want to harp on, though, is recency. Recency. What have they done lately? Maybe they clicked on an ad. Maybe they downloaded a white paper. If that happened a year ago, they've probably either bought something else or they probably have no idea who you are anymore. So those are some of the different characteristics that I like to think about. And I'll just like to walk us through a couple examples of how I think about when it's time to actually, start focusing on a prospect that's come through or make that handoff from marketing to sales. The first one is Anna. So Anna filled out a lead form on our website 6 months ago. She's bought products in our category before. She told us we're a CPG company. On the form field, she said she'd consider buying in the next 6 to 12 months. She hasn't been back to our site since then. So this is probably not one that I would send to an account executive, closing type operation, or if I'm the only person doing it, I would say this is someone we want to engage from a marketing perspective because they said that they would be in the market to buy this product in 6 months. They haven't really had a chance to do it right now. As far as we know, they haven't been back to our site. That's what our HubSpot is telling us. So this is definitely someone to engage, but someone to engage more from a top of funnel perspective, not necessarily from a account executive, we should, connect with this person. Fantastic. All right, so we've got Sam. So Sam clicks a link on our white paper and is now on our pricing page. He's there right now. From the information he entered on our site, he's a director level position at a Fortune 500 company. He's not evaluating products in our category at the moment, but we'll be taking a look in the next 3 months. Sam is probably someone I would send to sales. He's not immediately looking, but he's taken action now. He clicked on the link to a white paper we sent him. He has, he's on the pricing page. Pricing page is usually a pretty good indicator that someone is serious about a product or service. And, assuming Fortune 500 companies are companies that we like to work with, I would say this is someone I would send to an account executive, because if you're looking to make a decision or explore a decision in the next 3 months, that's pretty recent, especially when it comes to enterprise sales cycles. I would meet with this person all day. The last one I wanted to get a sense of is Greg. Greg loves the product. He's done the free trial. He's left a rave review with the support team. He's an individual user of this type of product at his company and has not made a purchase in the last 2 years. Greg is usually the hardest type of prospect for us. Greg loves what we do. Greg's not in a spot where he can actually make a decision. He doesn't have the authority. He might have influence. If he was involved in a committee that bought the last thing, that might be a different story. But the way it's described, he hasn't made a purchase. If we assume he hasn't been a part of those types of committees, Greg would be a no influence, no authority. No influence, no authority type of prospects are dangerous because they love to talk to you. They love to give you feedback on the product. And there are certain parts of your business that need that. But if you're focused on sales or marketing and generating prospects that are going to convert, I wouldn't put all my eggs in the Greg basket, because the probability that Greg comes through and buys a subscription are really, really low, which is tough to hear, because if you called Greg up, he would chat with you for 30 minutes, which can feel really great, especially if you've had other conversations that maybe didn't go as well. But I would urge you not to spend those 30 minutes with Greg. Maybe ask Greg for a referral to someone else on his team or organization. Ask him to leave you a testimonial or a review or something you could post or use in future collateral. That's all great, but that's more top of funnel. I would not send him through to a salesperson. So that's a little bit on some of the ways I think about lead scoring and where we go from there. We've covered two kind of key components when I think about the sales and marketing stack. The first is content. What are our 3 questions? The second is, when do you actually make this handoff? How do you actually connect from marketing to sales? When do you keep a lead? When should they stay? The final piece I want to dive on is inbound and outbound tactics. And I'm actually going to add one right up front, which is hiring, because hiring was a question that we had right away. So depending on the role, there are 2 kind of key roles that I tend to hire for the most in sales. First is BDR, SDR. Those are your top of funnel lead generation folks. They do outbound emails, they do outbound calls. The second is an account executive. These are folks that work opportunities. They demo your product if you're a product company. They give out they go through proposals if you're a services company. They work opportunities through to close. They are, as was described in the chat, or they can be your rainmakers. With each of those types of folks, BDR and SDR folks, I always look at people who have been selling a similar type of product if I can. Most SDR or BDR roles will get promoted within 12 months. What that means is at month 8, the best individual business development rep or sales development rep is probably on the market. And you could find them on LinkedIn. Some of the easiest things you can do to find these folks is I would go to LinkedIn search, and if you don't need Sales Navigator, you don't need Recruiter, go to LinkedIn, search by people, type in the word quota, and search the area where your company's office. Or if you're remote, it doesn't matter. You don't need that filter. The people who are talking about quota at that level are the people who are hitting quota every quarter or every month. They're hitting their demo numbers. They're booking new opportunities. And so that can be a prime way to go. You could also think about organizations that sell a similar product, or maybe so for us, they sell a software product and they sell it at a similar price point, even if the industry is very different. So in town here in the Twin Cities, I think about folks like SPS Commerce, Infor, Concur. Those could be folks that I would consider maybe in our evoked set of companies that have interesting sales reps today. So you could look directly there and kind of find those folks. I usually like to promote the BDR, SDR title and bring them over to maybe it's a more mission-driven company like a nonprofit. Maybe it's a startup or a different environment. Maybe it's a product that they care about more than whatever they're doing currently. So that can be a great way to find that BDR or SDR. With an account executive, we got some chat. Let's make sure we have some questions here before we keep going. What's a BDR, SDR? A BDR is a business development rep. An SDR is a sales development rep. They're different terms that essentially mean the same thing. What they do is it's a person who books meetings. So their goal is to get qualified opportunities for you and your company. And so if you think about a sales team, your sales team in the last 15 years got split. It got split into top of funnel sales, which is your business development and your sales development team, your BDR, SDR, and your lower funnel, your closers. And the reason for this split is you want your best closer focusing on the accounts that can close, not necessarily trying to find that new account where that can be a more junior person on the team. And so that's a little bit of how we handle the BDR, SDR side. So you can look up folks that are in those roles today at month 8, search for quota. That can be an easy way to find them. On the account executive side, again, it's usually something similar, right? I'm searching for my feeder companies, who's selling at the same price point. I think that's really important, regardless of if it's a different product or a different service. Someone selling services at $10,000 a year is going to understand the buying process a lot better than someone who is selling services for $300 a year. And so on that side, you're going to want to have folks kind of in those comparable positions. So we've got 2 other pieces I want to cover here, and then we'll jump into Q&A, I think, more broadly. So the 2 pieces, when I think about outbound and inbound tactics, so we've looked at content already. I always lead with a cold email in my outbounding. It's a good starting point. I follow a methodology called Cold Calling 2.0, which was created by Aaron Ross at Salesforce back in 2003. Still really relevant today. The most important thing I want to pull out of that system, though, is this idea of a justifier. A justifier is the reason why you're reaching out to this person. And it applies in marketing and sales equally. If I send an outbound email and I don't have a compelling reason why I'm reaching out, that email is going to get deleted. If I get someone on the phone and I don't have a good reason why I'm calling, I get hung up on. And if I put an ad on LinkedIn and there's not a compelling reason why it's there for you, you're going to just skip and scroll right through it. The other part of the blend here that I think is so important is this thing called a hand raise. Now, with our lead scoring earlier, we looked at when someone takes an action on our site, we usually want to move that person through to sales. They're recent, they just did something, they visited pricing, they filled out a lead form. You can also have this similar idea of a hand raise in an email. Someone might click on one of your emails. They might click on your link. That's usually a good time to do something. Maybe you're going to give them a call. Maybe you'll retarget that person using something like AdRoll, which is a service that lets you retarget certain emails. And so they'll see your ad. They're more likely to see your ad next time because they clicked and gave action. Those could be a couple different things you think about. When I think about actually calling someone, so say someone clicks on your email and you decide to call them, some of the common mistakes folks make is they talk really fast. They get really excited. They've got a live person on the phone and we think they're interested in the product. You don't want to do that. You want to use your normal pace, because when someone calls you on the phone and they start talking really fast, they're overly excited, you can kind of tell that they're probably there to sell you something, which isn't great. You want to ask them up front, give them an out for the conversation. You don't want to assume they have 5 minutes. Ask them if you caught them at an okay time. And you want to hit that justifier. The reason I'm calling is we just started working with the University of Michigan to help them complete their ADA compliance around video. Is that something you're looking to tackle this semester? Right? It's very clear. Okay, if this is something that I'm trying to solve for, this call could be relevant to me. And I clicked on this link for video content, so maybe it is likely. The last pieces I would say here, these kind of follow up on more sales and meeting tactics. So often we'll get an email or even live on a call, someone will tell us something. They'll give us a position. It has to have this feature. It can't cost more than $12,000. We always want to flip those into interests because positions are very firm. There's no wiggle room. It's very hard to solve that problem. But an interest is a lot easier to have a potential solution to. So when you start your meeting, your actual meeting, we're going over your product or your service, I usually will ask, what's important? Why did you want to meet with me? And they'll tell us a problem. And I'll say, when you're thinking about solving that problem, what's important? And they'll give us a couple things. And I might ask, what else is important? And they'll give us a couple more things. And then I'm trying to come up with a rank order. Which of these is the most important thing? Because then when the meeting goes on and the prospect says, hey, it needs to come in yellow, or it needs to cost, under X, I could say, well, I thought the most important thing was this. Is it really that it has to come in yellow? Should we add that to our list from the beginning? And usually it's a good way to either adjust the criteria so it's more complete, or you'll find out that it doesn't need to come in yellow if it can still do the top 3 things we talked about. That's how you get a sense of what actually matters to your prospect, to your customer. That's how you can get a better sense of, are you talking to the right person, kind of adjusting your qualification information on the fly. And so those are a few different pieces when I think about specific tactics that you can use in your business, right? Whether it's for your meetings and your sales presentations, whether it's for your content and your marketing, whether it's who to spend your time with from a sales and marketing side. The last thing I'm going to leave us with are just a couple quick tools that we can use. If you're looking to scale and automate, it can be hard. It can be really hard if you're an army of one, even if you have an established team. Here are some tools that I use today. So I use Upwork is a tool that I'll use primarily for data scraping. So Upwork's a site of freelancers. You can also find great designers. If you don't have any in-house design, you can find a great designer on Upwork to make your collateral really pop. But I'll also use them to find, list building on that side. Who should we be reaching out to? HubSpot, that's my go-to CRM. You could also use, any of them. SalesLoft, we looked at earlier, Salesforce. Mailshake is a great way to send outbound email. If you're not sending any outbound emails today and you think that could be part of your strategy, Mailshake is relatively cheap. It's $50 a month. They do automations. They leverage AI to actually tell you when your subject lines, your content is unlikely to be getting clicks or engagement. Cliently is a service that will do top of funnel for you. So if you've got a great closing process and the customers that you're finding convert, whatever your business is, if you're B2B, Cliently will do that lead gen, they'll do the outbound, the calling, they will iterate with you. They can be effective if you're in an industry that's established and you've got a very compelling why us. And then obviously Zoom, where we all are here today. So those are a few of the different pieces. In terms of all the ground that we covered, we went through some of the different content framing with the 3 questions. We looked at some of the different ways that you can prioritize contacts with prospect scoring, thinking about that recency variable, timeline, authority, all those different parts of the puzzle. We then went into some specific tactics that can improve your downstream sale. So if you're having a lot of meetings with prospects that go beyond discovery, they want to buy your product, how can you actually level that side of it up? And then here we went through just some tools that you can think about or try. The last one I'll give you isn't on this list for tools. It's called Copy AI. And this is if you're a small team. Copy AI uses AI to come up with marketing copy for you, for LinkedIn, for Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever you're using, however you're finding people, whether it's B2B or B2C. Copy AI can be a great tool to automate some of those flows. We've used them for some of our content, and you can't tell for the most part that it was written by an AI and not a person. So it can be a really powerful way to keep your costs low, right? You may not need to hire a full-time marketer if you can leverage some of these tools. But the reason why these pieces are always so important, why I always love covering them, is because when you're thinking about a new market or finding ways to improve your sales process, it can feel hard. It can feel like driving your car in the middle of the desert. Your gas tank is almost on E. The next station's in 100 miles. But just know that you can make it. And I'm happy to be a part and a resource of that journey for you as well. I'll give you my contact info in the chat here. So if there's other questions that come up that we don't get to, you can message me. But otherwise, let's jump over to Q&A. Devin, back to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sean, for the presentation. We have just a few minutes, but some questions have been coming in. And if you do still have questions, now's the time. So send them in through the chat. We'll get through a couple here. One of the questions that came in a little bit ago was from Zach. He asked if you could touch on demand generating strategies versus the traditional MQL or marketing qualified lead over to sales, like you mentioned before. He said that the challenge that he's seeing is sending over a lead to sales that downloaded an ebook or something like that.
Yeah.
It's a lead with low intent, so the likelihood to close is very low. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, for sure. And so that kind of reminds me, we had one, Anna, right, in our prospect list, who did something on our website 6 months ago. And so assuming Anna, downloaded an ebook this month and pretend recency is not a factor, she still may not be a good person to send to sales. If that's all she did, if she didn't view the pricing page, if she didn't take other actions. So when you're scoring your leads, not all content or pages are creating equal. Usually pricing page, that's kind of a ubiquitous one. If someone's on pricing page, if someone's looking at the demo or the trial, they're probably more interested than someone who's on the blog. Right. And it could be you send that lead through still, but maybe they have to do a lot more actions. So they have to visit a dozen blog posts over the last 3 weeks. And maybe this is a person who could be relevant. I still wouldn't send them to my closer. I'd send them to my top of funnel salesperson, my SDR, BDR, who we talked about earlier, because it could be an interesting lead for them. I'd say this, when someone comes from marketing and they are qualified, if they're that true MQL, it can be really powerful. Usually they have a shorter cycle time to close because they're already looking, they already kind of know the why anything, that they have a problem that needs solving. And so you don't want to miss out on those. But at the same time, if you send every single person who fills out a form to your salesperson, you'll probably have a frustrated salesperson because they won't be qualified. So think back to your prospect scoring. It's okay to weigh those pages differently. How can you kind of make sure that the best leads rise to the top, and that's who your salespeople are spending their time with?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Another question just popped in from Pam. I think it's really insightful. How much time do you as a team spend to measure success and adjust your strategies accordingly?
Yeah, so if you're entering a new market or if you're trying a new tactic, I look at our success metrics weekly. If it's something that's more established and you're making tweaks to it, for us, our team at BetterYou, for example, we've got a team of 4 or 5 salespeople. They look at their metrics every month. They run experiments every month, and then they're basically promoting the winners and killing off the ideas and campaigns that didn't work or weren't as effective. And so you want to iterate faster when you have fewer data points, because it's possible that a small change to a subject line in an email or a call to action in an ad could really have a substantial impact, and you don't want to be locked in and not know it's happening. So I would say, the time to be more obsessive over your content is in the earlier stages where you can pivot and iterate really quickly. It's a little different when you think about, statistics. You have a really small sample size, so it could be due to chance. But if you wait those months early on, if you've got a campaign that isn't performing well, you're better off cutting it and replacing it with one, even with a small sample size that's doing better, because you lose that time. You don't necessarily get that back.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that insight, Sean. Maybe just one more quick question here. Becky had asked which resources, you may have even highlighted some of them already, but which ones
Yep.
use AI to write emails? Just
Oh yeah, it's a tool called Copy AI. I just posted it in the chat. So Copy AI is an interesting company. So they launched about a year ago. They've caught complete fire. They're doing I think it's over 100K in monthly recurring revenues now, when they launched less than a year ago. So it's just really a great win for them, but it's because they've got a good product. So they get a lot of referrals from social media. So if you go on Twitter and you type in Copy AI, you'll find a lot of people talking about their product. And we've used it for our ads. We've used it for some email content. How it works is you need to describe the product and what it does. Copy AI has no idea what you do, your service, your product, your offering. It'll ask you for some of the things that it thinks you think rather are special. So think about your 3 questions. How can you answer the why anything, the why us, the why now? Give that to Copy AI, and it can come up with some really compelling content for you. Can be a nice way to get started. They have a free trial, so if you're looking to get started but you're worried about making all this content, you can offload some of that right at the get-go.
That's awesome. We're going to close this down for time, Sean, but I just want to again say thank you so much for sharing with us this morning. This has been really insightful. I know I've written down a couple of things myself. I want to say thank you to everyone who's joined us for today's session. We hope that you found it interesting and maybe you jotted down an idea or two as well. A couple of quick announcements as we shut down. If you're looking for additional professional development opportunities, I hope that you'll check out our website for upcoming continuing and professional education or CAPE programs and other learning sessions. If you really liked what you heard from Sean this morning, you should check out our CAPE course titled The Art of Sales Persuasion for more content, much more content on how to win more deals. That's a self-paced course online, really exciting. So check that out. A few other kind of live programs that are coming up soon are Digital Marketing Fundamentals and our Certified Professional Project Manager program. Both are starting on July 19th. And we just hope that you'll tell your network about our online learning series. Come to the next one. Don't forget to register and send it out to your network. Thank you all so much for joining us at the University of St. Thomas this morning. Hope you have a wonderful day. Be well. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Sean.